Okay, go ahead.
All right, we're back to section 2 here, and I want to just direct your attention now to Genesis chapter 10. Verse 1. These are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Sons were born to them after the flood. So the rest of chapter 10, this is really, these are those descendants, the sons of Japheth, 2 in verse 2, and then goes down. Also talks about where they went. 6, sons of Ham. You know, there's a thing about in verse 6, the sons of Ham, one was Cush, one was Egypt. Another was Put, and then there was Canaan. So we're not going to look at all these names, but these are basically the generations of the sons that came after the flood to Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Just a couple of things to point out before we go to verse 11. If you look at verse 8, Cush became the father of Nimrod. He was the first on earth to be a mighty man. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. I just raise that because sometimes we hear about Nimrod, who was this mighty great hunter in the post-flood world. Let me see, anything else I want to pick out at the moment? Not really. So verse 32, chapter 10. These are the families of the sons of Noah, according to their genealogies in their nations, and from these the nations spread abroad on the earth after the flood. So just to kind of, what does that mean? After the flood, Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, they had children, those children had children, and then in order to live, they all began to spread out, so they were not on top of one another. So the earth was beginning to be populated. Chapter 11. This is where I want to spend some time then today. Chapter 11 is the story about the Tower of Babel. Verse 1. Now the whole earth had one language and few words. Verse 4. Then they said, Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. And I guess it warrants going on to verse 5. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. And the Lord said, Behold, they are one people, and they all have one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do, and nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and there confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off the building of the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. So this is significant, and if I can paraphrase now, if I can paraphrase what we just read. The inhabitants in this city wanted to build a great city for themselves. That word right away ought to trip us up to there's still sin in the world. But they wanted to build a tower. And they wanted that tower to reach up into heaven. Because we believe they wanted to have that access to God. And even at that early age, they realized that God is in the heavens. So they wanted to build this tower that would reach up into the heavens so they could come and go and commune with the Lord. And the Lord came down, it said, and basically the Lord did not like what he saw. And so what happened? The Lord destroyed the tower eventually, but in so destroying the tower, their idea, he confused their languages. So to that point, we can assume then that on the face of the earth, no matter where people went, there was one language. And everybody could understand each other. Yes. And everybody could understand each other. However, after this episode, now the languages were confused so that no one could understand someone else. And that's kind of how all these different languages began in the different locales where they are. Now, I think that's interesting to note. Not only that it's the beginning of, let's say, languages, but I think it's interesting to note because from that time on, now remember, when we knew each other's language, we still were at odds. We still were at enmity. And now when language becomes a barrier, that's going to be even another block, hurdle that we'll have to get over. In order for me to make my wishes known, I'm going to have to somehow get you to understand what I'm trying to say. You know, they didn't have Berlitz in those days where they could go learn these languages. You know, so from that point on, Genesis chapter 11, language becomes confused, and that's where we get that whole, that whole thing about Babel. You know, we say to people that are kind of like rambling on, stop babbling. You know, you're making no sense. And that's where all this comes. That's where this all comes from. Because here in verse, where was it here? Verse 9. Therefore its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. So that confusion, the babbling, and all that stuff is yes, that's where it came from.
There's a point too. There's a literary device kind of used here too, if you notice, where they want to build the tower to heaven, as Pastor Weber said. But if you notice what it says when the Lord came in verse 5, what does it say? The Lord came down to the city and to the tower. So you have, if you kind of like were to put this into like a TV show or a movie type of situation, you have these people that are like, we're going to build a tower to God, right? And so they built this tower, and now we're on equal footing with God. And that's really what the sin about it is that they wanted to reach into the heavens so that they could be on equal footing with God, But the Lord came down. So there's this idea of, he's still high above them, to the fact where he's like kind of like peering down. So he has to come down just to see what's going on with the people. So it's not even like, he's waving to them they're at the top of the tower. It's like, I have to come down just to see what's going on. And so it illustrates once again how mighty the Lord is compared to the people, and how the problem with the people is that here they go again, trying to put themselves equal to God, which is something we still do.
Yeah. Just like
He's everywhere, so that doesn't even. This is the author of the writing of this, seeing God up there when God's here. I mean, it just doesn't fit with our understanding now about God and His presence or whatever.
Well, you raise an interesting inquiry. I think you have to remember that some of the things that we think about or know about today, we're always in the process of coming. So for example, they may not have known that concept at this time, that God is everywhere. They may, because when we have met God in this, so far in Scripture, it's kind of been localized. So they may have not have developed that whole idea that God is present everywhere. That's coming,
Genesis 2, God was taking a stroll in the garden, and Adam and Eve hid themselves.
Yeah. Another example of things that they didn't have any concept of. At this point in time, they still didn't have a concept of hell. That theological concept was not worked out. The movie. This is an aside. The movie, The Ten Commandments. Remember with Charlton Heston? We've all seen that. Edward G. Robinson. When Pharaoh says to Moses, "You take your people and let them go," and so now the Israelites are packing up, etc., 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 and some of the officials of Pharaoh are a bit nervous as to what's going on. And in the movie, some Israelite goes up to Edward G. Robinson, who's a part of Pharaoh's retinue, and Edward G. Robinson says, "Where are you going?" And the response is, "To hell. That's where we're going." Well, at that point in time, even that concept of going to hell is a place of punishment, was not thought out. So that's a part of the movie that they took some poetic license in order to help us understand that it was a very, very bad time.
Well, the Egyptians, they had a concept of an afterlife.
Yes, but not. Was an afterlife with a punishment,
Yeah.
or just as a reward?
No, both.
Okay. Now, yes, go ahead.
Who?
This
Well, I mean, that
reminds me of,
paganism, yeah.
in the New Testament, I guess it's Pentecost, where suddenly everybody understood all the different.
Well, I'm glad you say that because you can segue because that's where we're going to go next. So no, that's very good. So if you take your little bookmark and stay there at 11, let's jump forward to Acts chapter 2. That's in the New Testament. And here we'll take a break while we're looking this up.